So in the current lecture, we are learning about the various training methods that organizations undertake for their employees. So we know that there are two types of training methods. One is on the job, that is conducted at the job place itself, at the workplace itself, and the other is off the job training. So as we say that, as the name itself is self-explanatory, it occurs away from your workplace, and it is necessary at times to get people away from their work environment so they feel less of stress and frustration. So we will now learn about the various types or various methods that will come under off the job training. So one such method is called the lecture method. And what is a lecture? Well, lecture is a verbal presentation of any information by an instructor to a large audience, and the lecturer is presumed to possess a considerable depth of knowledge of the subject at hand. So a virtue of this method is that it can be used for a very large group, and hence the cost per trainee is low. So we can say it is not a very costly method of training. But however, there are certain limitations of lecture method, and that accounts for its low popularity. So these limitations are that this method, it violates the principle of learning by practice, because here the trainees are not practicing anything, they are just sitting and the lecturer is delivering the lecture, and you are just listening and being a part of that lecture, but you are not actually practicing what is being taught to you. The second limitation is that it constitutes a one-way communication, because only the lecturer is providing information or only the lecturer is communicating. We cannot, as a trainee, we cannot communicate. So it is not a two-way communication or a two-way learning, it is a one-way method of communication. Then another disadvantage is that there is no feedback from the audience. So lecturer is just delivering a lecture and not taking any feedback from the audience. And this continued lecturing for say 2 hours, 3 hours, this can lead to boring. The audience gets bored, and that is a biggest disadvantage of this method. Now, although lectures are becoming less popular as a form of learning design, they still have great relevance, particularly when we talk of large companies on topics like new research, product development, or new legislation, especially in the health sector, safety, environment areas, and are also much used in the induction process. So if it has certain limitations, it has its relevance and advantages also. So this is one such method of off-the-job training. The second method is using audio visuals. Now this includes television slides, overheads, video types and films, and these can be used to provide a wide range of realistic examples of job conditions and situations in a condensed period of time. Now what does audio visual constitute? Well, it constitutes a one-way system of communication, again with no scope for the audience to raise doubts for clarification. So if you are learning something through the internet or through a television series, it is again one-way system of communication where the audience cannot raise doubts. So this is what you are learning presently through television is one such method of training. You are sitting at home watching TV and I am giving a lecture, but you cannot communicate with me if you have any doubt. So there is also no flexibility of presentation from audience to audience. So this also has certain limitations, we can say. So the third method is the programmed instruction or the PI method. Now this method is where the training is offered without intervention of a trainer. So as the name suggests, it is programmed instruction. There is not a trainer who is giving any instructions to to the trainees, but it is a programmed instruction. So the information here is provided to the trainee in blocks. Now these blocks can be either in a book form or through a teaching machine. And after reading each block of material, the learner must answer a question about it. Now if you answer these questions and if your answers are correct, then you move to the next level. So trainees work at programmed material at their own speed, independently, and they assess their own comprehension after each step through an exam question or filling in a diagram. So there is a test after each level, and if you clear that test, you then move on to the next higher level. So this method consists of a network of tests and statements which direct the trainee accordingly depending on their pattern of errors. So if you are committing more errors, then you will have to redo that particular portion again. And when the errors are minimized, then only you can move to the next level. But all this can be done at the pace of the trainee. So this is the best advantage we can say of this method. The trainee has to overcome their errors and then move on to the further levels. So thus the programmed instruction involves presenting questions, facts or problems to the learner and allowing person to respond, providing feedback on accuracy of his or her answers. If the answers are correct, the learner proceeds to next block. If not, he or she has to repeat the same. So this is the procedure or the process of how a programmed instructor actually works. So the main advantage of PI is that it is self-paced and the trainees can progress through programs at their own speed. So they are not in a rush to finish one level and then move on to next level, even if they haven't understood what they want to learn. So the basis or the basic objective of any training is to enhance the skills and knowledge. Now if that has not been done and you are in a rush to move and to a further level, then the objective of training has failed. So the best advantage of this is that it is self-paced, you can learn at your own sweet pace. Then it is a strong motivation is provided to learner to repeat learning. So if you are not up to the mark, you will have to repeat whatever you have learned. Then the material is also structured and self-contained, offering much scope for practice. But the disadvantages are also there. So the scope of learning is less compared to other methods of training, and the cost of preparing books, manuals and machinery is considerably high. So we can say this is a costly method of training. The next method is computer assisted instruction or the CAI. It is we can say it is just an extension of the programmed instruction method that we just learnt about. The speed, the memory and the data manipulation capabilities of a computer permit greater utilization of basic PI concept. For example, the learner's response may determine a frequency and difficulty level of next frame. Now let us compare both these methods of CAI and the PI method. So the computer aided instruction provides for accountability as the tests taken on computer. So the management can clearly monitor each trainee's progress or their needs. So here the accountability of test is taken on the computer. It can be modified easily to reflect technological innovations in the equipment for which employee is being trained. Then more flexible, as trainees can usually use computer almost any time they want and thus get training when they prefer. So the next method that we are going to learn in off the job training category is simulation. So a simulator, as we all know, it is any kind of equipment or a technique that duplicates actual conditions that are encountered by an employee on the job as nearly as possible. So a simulation is an attempt to create a realistic decision making environment for the trainee and it presents the likely problem situations and decision alternatives to a trainee. So, here you will be given a problem situation and you will have to decide as to what alternatives you have, and out of those alternatives which is the best alternative, so on which you can work upon and take a decision related to that particular problem. So, the next method that we are going to learn is the vestibule training. So, mostly this method of training, it will be used to train the technical staff, the office staff and employees who deal with tools and machines. So, employees learn their jobs on equipment they will be using, but the training is conducted away from the actual work floor by bringing equipments or tools to a certain place where training is provided, but not at the workplace. Now, most of the time students get confused as they say that vestibule training is a kind of on the job training. Now, here you will be working on actual equipments that you are going to work in your job, but these equipments are not lying at your workplace, but they are placed at some other place which is not your workplace. So, this is called a vestibule training. Now, this kind of training, it allows employees to get a full feel for doing a task without real world pressures. It minimizes the problem of transferring learning to job. You are learning at the equipment or the machine that you will be working at your place. So, it is provided to employees when new or advanced equipment or tools are introduced in the organization to do a particular job. So, that is how a vestibule is created, where you will get an advanced kind of an equipment or advanced tools are introduced in the organization, and you are allowed to work on those equipments or tools. The next method of the job training is the case studies method, which is a very interesting concept in the field of training and development. So, what are case studies? You must have seen in books also that when you complete one particular aspect of a chapter, there are certain case studies are given. So, case studies are basically written descriptions of an actual situation from the past that can be either from the same organization or somewhere else or some other organization, and the trainees are supposed to analyze and give their conclusions in writing. Now, this is an excellent method to ensure full and wholehearted participation of employees, and it generates good interest among them. So, a case is later discussed by the instructor with all the pros and cons of each option that the trainee comes up with, and this is an ideal method to promote decision making abilities within constraints of limited data. So, whatever data you are given, there will be constraints because the complete scenario will not be told to you. So, with those limited information that you have got, you have to come up with ideas to solve that particular issue, and all the pros and cons of each option are then discussed. Then the case study method, it basically focuses on building decision making skills. Then it also assesses and develops the KSAs. It also helps in developing communication and interpersonal skills because you are discussing it with your seniors. Then it helps in developing management skills, developing procedural and strategic knowledge. So, the next method in this series of the job training methods is role playing. So, during a role play, the trainees assume roles and act out situations connected to the learning concepts. So, it is good for customer service and training, and this method is also called role reversal, socio-drama or a psychodrama. So, role playing is known by these names also. So, here the trainees act out a given role as they would in a stage play. So, this is just like a stage where one person will be playing the hero, the other will be a heroine, a supporting actor or supporting actress, or somebody who is an antagonist, a negative character. So, in role plays also a certain situation is given to the trainees. So, they will be deciding on what role they will be playing, who will be the supervisor, who will be the new employee, who will be the trainee. So, all roles are decided upon by the trainees. So, 2 or more trainees are assigned roles in a given situation, which is explained to the group. Now, there are no written lines to be said, and naturally there are no rehearsals as in a particular play, but the role players have to quickly respond to situation that is ever changing. So, we all know that the environment is ever changing and we have to adopt certain aspects very quickly. So, we know that situation is ever changing and we have to react to it as they would in the real one. So, here also they have to learn how to quickly adapt to situations. Now, this is a method of human interaction that involves realistic behavior in an imaginary or a hypothetical situation. So, an imaginary or any hypothetical situation is given to the trainees and they have to decide how and who will behave in what manner. So, primarily it involves employee-employee relationships, discussing a grievance problem, conducting a post-appraisal interview, disciplining a subordinate or a salesman making presentation to a customer. So, these are certain we can say scenarios that are given to the trainees on which they have to take up a role and act. So, the next technique is the in-basket technique. Now, in this method, each team of trainees is given different files of correspondence of business problems. So, these are also called business papers like memoranda, reports and telephone messages and other general papers which come across the table of a manager. So, that is why it is called in basket. So, what all is there in the basket of a manager? He or she will have reports, there would be telephone messages, there would be papers coming in across for their signatures, there will be memorandums. So, every trainee has to study these reports, they have to analyze and make their comments on the file. But most importantly, they have to prioritize that what needs urgent attention. Is it the telephone that I have to answer? Is it this report that I have to go through? Is it this memorandum that I have to go through and give my comments upon? So, the trainee here basically learns how to prioritize all these situations that they will be facing when they are taking up that particular role. So, in this technique, the trainee is given some information about role to be played, such as description, responsibilities, the general context about the role, and the trainee is then given a log of materials that make up the in basket and is asked to respond to materials within a particular time period. So, after all the trainees complete the in basket, a discussion with the trainer will take place. So, in this discussion, trainee describes the justification for the decisions he or she has taken. The trainer then provides the feedback, encouraging the trainee to increase the alternatives for those made unsuitably. Now, these were the off-the-job training methods that we learned today. Now, what are the advantages of off-the-job training methods? So, you can anticipate that here the trainers are usually experienced enough to train. So, the trainees are getting training from experienced trainers. Then it is more systematically organized, because in case of on the job training, we learned that it is not very well structured, because you are working as well as you are being trained on your job itself. But here in the off the job training methods, we see that they are more systematically organized. then it is efficiently created programs and they add lot of value. The on the job training methods were not very effective and not very efficient, but off the job training methods, we would say that they are more value adding to the trainee who is learning. Now, if we have advantages, we certainly have disadvantages also. So, as far as the disadvantages of an off the job training methods are concerned, it is not directly in context of the job. The first disadvantage, because you are getting the training on various aspects which might not be related to the context of your job. The second disadvantage is it is often very formal. So, the interaction part is might be missing, and when you are unable to interact with the trainee or your co-employees or co-workers, then it becomes less, it becomes more boring and it becomes less interesting. So, it may not be based on experience, then it is expensive, as we learned that off the job training methods are quite expensive because here the expertise is involved, and as far as the programmed instruction or the computer aided instruction is concerned, there also a costly material is involved. So, that makes off the job training more expensive in comparison to on the job training. Then here the trainees may not be much motivated. Then it is artificial in nature because we know that lecture method is there or audio visuals are there. They are little less interactive and they are more artificial in nature, whereas in the on job training you are actually working at the workplace, you are actually being trained by people who are around you and with whom you will be working in future. So, that makes off the job training a little we can say artificial in nature. So, friends, in today's lectures we learnt about the importance of a good training method. So, there are two types of training methods. One is on the job, the second is off the job. In on the job training, the trainees learn while they are doing that job. So, it can be job rotation or it can be mentoring, where a senior member of the team, he or she teaches you the various aspects of your job, the vision and mission of the organization, and there are certain other number of methods, but all these methods will have their own advantages as well as disadvantages. The second method is off the job training, where you are being trained not at the workplace but at a place that is away from your workplace, and there are certain methods under off the job training category. Again, it has certain advantages and it has certain disadvantages also. Now, it is up to the organizations to decide that which training method they have to adopt. So, we learnt about the criteria also, that what is the purpose of your training method, what are the constraints. Now, if you have budgetary constraints, certainly if you can't spend a huge amount of money on training, then the best method of training would be on the job, because we learned that off the job training is a bit expensive, and here the employees also might not be very motivated and it is artificial in nature. But at the same time, you will also have to consider that what level of employees you have to train. If they are entry level employees, then again on the job is a good method. But if they are of middle level or they are of high level management, then off the job training is more beneficial or more relevant. So, we will continue with some other aspects of training and development in the next couple of lectures. Thank you.